Hello viewers, how on a day? I want to use this video to reply somebody who has reacted because he felt I mentioned a president that is his brother who has failed us. Though we wait for the end of his tenure to finalize our assessment of him. So this guy's name is Bright Olayinka, Bright Ole 8. I'm not replying him because he's so important. No, because I know that a lot of people have this kind of view. So it's good to reply him. I was talking about Traoré, the president of Burkina Faso who rejected IMF loan. Yes, that was in the video before this one. And I was hailing him that is a bold step actually. And maybe other African leaders will copy. I was hailing him for taking that bold step. You know, such loan is so alluring, and that is what many African presidents want. Not with an exception of our current president. And this guy wants to react. Look at what he said. He said, imagine Azuka praising a military dictator. He is not a president but a coup plotter who seized power in an undemocratic way. You said we should forget democracy and embrace anarchy and an undemocratic seizure of power. How can a military government without mandate represent people's choice? Before I start educating him on performances of some military governments in the past, I want to ask him if Traoré's rise to power is different from Tinubu's rise to power. Yes, they say Nigeria is in a democracy. Maybe Traoré truncated a democratic government and came into power. But then, my question is, if a democratic process is subverted, is it not like a coup against the people? Yes, we saw what happened in Nigeria's last election. How did the current president got there? Was the election free and fair? Even though at the end of the day, the courts, INEC announced whatever they liked, the court validated it. Nigerians know what happened. And it's a stab on Nigerians, and they are not happy. How can somebody win an election and it was like a mourning period for the country? As if the country went into mourning when the guy won the election. So this guy said, I'm praising a military dictator. Most of your presidents in the past, they got in through coup. The people that ruled Nigeria, coup after coup. But I'm not even talking about that. Somebody came and told us it is his turn. He bribed his way to the top. Igbos in Lagos were forced to vote against their will. They are forced to vote for a particular candidate that is not their will. Ballot box in action, voters intimidation, all sorts of things happened during the election. Even prior to the election, we saw a lot of voters' cards dumped in the forest, under the canal, under gutters, by these same forces. At the end of the day, INEC announced whatever. Despite what the constitution said about Abuja, that you have to win 25%. This guy did not even come close. They gave it to him. So what is different between that and a military man who took over power by force? What is the difference? Anyway, that's not the point I want to hit. There's something I was telling him in the comment section that I want to look at. Now, Bright Olayinka, I want you to learn something. I'm referring to you and all of the people who have the same view like you. Yeah, this video is for them. Good governance, it doesn't depend on military or civilian rule. It depends on certain factors. This video is more like a lecture for you, Bright or Lainka. If you reply again, I will continue to give you more lectures. Good governance does not depend on military or civilian rule. It depends on who is in power and the way he chose to. A military man can catapult a country to glory, even a civilian man. So it doesn't matter whether it's a civilian or military that is in power. What matters is the person accountable? Accountability. Leaders being responsible for their actions. Are they accountable? Nigerians have been demanding, where are this money spent? Where are this one spent? Why will the Senate be living largely, spending extravagantly? These are the things, and nobody is telling them to, bringing them to answer some queries. Now, second factor, transparency. We are talking about clear decision-making processes and accessible information. Most of the deal that is done in the name of governing Nigeria are not open to Nigerians. They are not transparent. Who are you for them to tell you how they govern this country? Who are you? Even the ones you manage to see and you query, like when they file certain things in budgets, including the cruise ship, the yacht. What did they tell you? Who are you for them to be transparent and show you what they do? So, I'm telling you what good governance depends on. Rule of law. Fair and enforced laws. Participation. Citizens, this is like the number 2, transparency. Citizens' involvement in decision making. The Senate will not just impose anything on us, or the president will just enact a law, this and that. I will increase this, I will do this. How are the citizens being carried along? Then the other thing is human rights. Protection of individual rights and freedoms. A lot of Nigerians are afraid to say certain things because of what will happen to them. A lot of them are afraid. So you know a good leader by what he allows in the country. How accountable is he? How transparent is he? How his government does about the rule of law? How the citizens of that country are involved in the decision making. Then the other one is human rights. The other day they are trying to hound Nigeria, stop them from protesting. It's just like beating somebody. You are telling the person you don't have the right to cry, but you are hurting the person to the point that the person needs to even cry blood. But you are beating him. You don't have the right to protest or cry. So both military and civilian governments can exhibit good or bad governance. Let me give you slight examples before I go into the main cocoa, because this is like a lecture. Both military government and civilian governments can exhibit good and bad governance. So it doesn't mean, the guy, remember the question, he was querying why I should support a coup plotter. Meanwhile, how did his own president came into power? Now, let's talk about military and civilian governments. I'm not arguing for a military man in power. No, I'm arguing for both sides. But with a view that Both can be good. I'm trying to let him learn a lot. Now, military governments. Let me start with military government. Military government. Now, Singapore did well with the military government. Military governance, good. What about Myanmar? Poor governance. Still military government, poor governance. So it doesn't depend on whether it's a military government or not. Military governments in Singapore, good. But Myanmar, poor governance. Now let's get to civilian government. In Norway, the civilian government works so well. What about Venezuela? Poor governance. Norway, sweet, good. They are civilians. So it doesn't depend on whether it's a military or civilian. I've given you ideas why any of this can work. I've given you factors that matters and not whether it's a military or civilian man that is in power. Good governance is about the quality of leadership, about the institutions and the policies, not the type of government. Quality of leadership, institutions, policies, and not the type of government. Not whether it is a military or a civilian government. Okay, let me write on with the lecture. Like we said, Singapore did well with military. 1959 to 1965, Lee Kuan Yew leadership. He transformed Singapore into modern prosperous nation. Lee Kuan Yew, 1959 to 1965. The man who transformed Singapore was a military man. Another one is South Korea. 1961 to 1993. Military rule brought rapid economic growth and even industrialization. 1961 to 1993, military rule in, if you talk about South Korea today, oh, sweet place to be. See what military rule did there. It was a military rule that industrialized the place, speeded up the economic growth of that country. 1961 to 1993. What about Chile? 1973 to 1990. Augusto Pinochet's regime implemented free market reforms leading to economic growth. Still, I'm stating military rules that did well now. In the past, I'll still state the present ones. Brazil, 1964 to 1985. Military rule brought stability and economic growth. Brazil. Go and check the records, because I did my findings to come here. Still educating Olayinka Bright. Hope he will respond and this thing will be, we'll make it an epic something. We'll make it in seasons. Now, I want to talk about the present ones, where military rule did well presently. Rwanda, 1994 till date, Paul Kagame's military-backed government has brought stability and economic growth. Many did not know that his government was a military government. Paul Kagame, president of Rwanda. Thailand, from 2014 to this moment, the military junta has maintained stability and implemented economic reforms. We're talking about where military government did well. Now, Egypt, 2013 till present, Fatah took over. Abdel Fattah el-Sisi. He took over from, I think, the Muslim Brotherhood or so. In a coup. Yes, military government take over. But what happened? He has brought economic stabilities to that country. And look at the growth Egypt is experiencing. Now, while rounding up, I want you to note, ruling well is subjective and it may vary depending on individual perspectives. The example we just gave you is based on economic growth, stability, and development, but may not necessarily mean respect for human rights or democratic principles. Please note, note properly. And in conclusion, yes, the fact is, military rule can lead to authoritarianism, human rights abuses, and suppression of democratic freedoms. It can also lead to that. But then, there are cases, even the civilian rule does the same. There are some countries that are being ruled by, that are in a democracy, but human rights abuses is at the highest. During Buhari's time, Amnesty International recorded a lot of abuses. Yes, Buhari is not the military era, Buhari of this democratic setting era. So what are we saying? Remember, our judgment is based on economic growth, stability, and development. There could be human rights abuses, but then we are looking at an angle of it. Please share this video. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe if you have not subscribed. Bye for now.